So I want to start off by sort of ending with chapter 2 in the area of what is a critic and what exactly the critic does. What's the relationship of the critic to the audience, and how is a critic different than a reviewer? So the first thing I want to sort of discuss is, and this all comes from your textbook, so the critic has a serious background in theater, and they will have some kind of background that also understands the different disciplines of acting and directing as well as design. They use their judgment to assist the audience in understanding and appreciating the event. So to criticize it doesn't mean to find fault. It simply means to understand and appraise. And so that's the role of the critic. So the critic will have this background in the arts and theater history and understand directing, acting, designing, but they'll also be familiar with plays in general and genres of plays. They'll be familiar with the bodies of work by individual playwrights, and they'll help connect the themes of the play to current social or political or even cultural contexts. The critic understands all of this as well as the production elements, and then they should be able to evaluate whether or not something is good or bad in terms of direction, or whether or not there's skillful acting. They'll have an understanding of what are sort of good practices or the principles of good design. And so they might offer their appraisal of the scenic elements of a particular show. But ultimately, what our book sort of highlights is that the critic is interested in sort of these three particular questions. What is being attempted? Have the intentions been achieved? And was this attempt worthwhile? And so the critic is answering these questions to assist the audience in evaluating whether or not they should attend a production, or whether or not something is worthwhile to pay for and go see. Now, obviously, critics, it's an opinion, right? So your own experience at a play is just as valuable and as important as a critic's, but that's basically what a critic's job is to do. So when a critic is looking at what is being attempted, they're looking at the script. They're also looking at the production. They might think about whether or not is it a tragedy, but are members of the audience laughing? So that attempt might fail in that area. Or what exactly is the director trying to do? Is the director updating the script? Say it's Shakespeare and they're spinning some concept onto the play, and is it working? Is that what they're trying to accomplish? And then ultimately, are they being faithful to what the playwright intended? So have these intentions been achieved? The critic will assess whether or not the original creators' ideas have been realized, and if not, what are the differences? And then if it's a new script, how well do the playwright's intentions come to life for the first time? So did it succeed? And then was this entire attempt worthwhile? Now this is where it becomes a little more personal taste and evaluation. Say some people think that if something's entertaining, it's worthwhile. Others think that if it has an intense social message or moves an audience member to feel something a certain way, then it was worthwhile. So was it a pleasurable experience? Was it serious, or was it effective? Meaning, like, did it cause the audience to think about something or to see something in a new light? So all of these things can be evaluated as to whether or not that attempt was worthwhile. The critic also will sometimes lay out both fact and opinion, and so it's your job when you're reading a critic's review to understand what is fact and what's opinion. So a reviewer, the difference between a critic and a reviewer is that a reviewer tends to just summarize the event. They usually don't have as much space to write in, and it's almost more of an opinion op-ed, right? So it's less informative in its approach, in that the reviewer doesn't necessarily have to have a background in what they are looking at, whereas the critic is like seriously looking at the play and the attempt and brings a sort of knowledge to their assessment. And then finally, the chapter ends with sort of discussing what a dramaturg or literary manager is. Now, this is a position that most professional theaters hold. Some universities actually offer degrees in literary management or dramaturgy, and it's a fairly new position in the sense that it's only about 100 years old, and but a lot of nonprofits can't afford to also have a dramaturg, or they hire them on a case-to-case basis. So what a dramaturg actually does is they are an advisor. They'll research past productions of a script. They'll read new scripts. They'll prepare reports of like the history of the play. They'll research criticism or translations or interpretations. They might read criticism. They might read scholarly works, and then they might actually write a sort of not summary, but a position and point of view about how this production is taking on this play, and they might put together educational packets or study guides. So the dramaturg or literary manager has a lot of different things that they do, but it's all usually very much based on interacting with the text itself. So what is the relationship of the audience with a critic? Well, critics can help an audience understand what a playwright's position is, or what a playwright's concept for the play is. A critic might disagree with how audiences receive something, and ultimately there's no absolute authority on an experience, right? So sometimes overanalysis can get in the way of the magic of the live theater event. And so I suggest that when you read critical reviews of plays that you take it with a grain of salt, because it's one perspective and you might have a different experience. So that's sort of the critic in a nutshell.